Hello everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome to my channel. Those of you who are returning, welcome back. Those of you who are brand new, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I am a licensed therapist. I'm also an author working on my first novel. And on my channel, I like to dig into what I consider to be the heart of writing, the characters. The heart of the characters is in their psychology, because that determines everything we do. So that's what we dig into on my channel, from world building to character building to tropes, everything that falls in between. So for today, we are digging into what I have been calling my trope diagnosis video, which is where I take a popular character or plot trope and I dig into the psychology behind it and whether or not it is accurate or not. So today's has actually been suggested. Yay! I hope I'm saying this right. Joan Ninja Hen on my villain lair video mentioned that I had left out the self-destruct button, and it occurred to me, yeah, that is a pretty popular trope that we see with villains. So let's dig into it. All right, so first and foremost, what is said trope? What is the self-destruct button? Well, it's kind of exactly what it says on the tin. The villain, pick their lair of choice or weapon of choice, has a button that will essentially destroy the whole place and everybody that's in it. Usually you see it a lot in spy movies. You see it in basically a ton of children's cartoons. The villain almost always has a self-destruct button. And I think this one is particularly interesting because there's a couple different angles that we can take with this. So we're just going to take them one at a time. So first and foremost, what is the self-destruct button doing for the villain? And I really think it boils down to a sense of power and control. An interesting example from history that you guys might find intriguing. During World War II, any weapons that were used by the Japanese military had the symbol of the emperor, the chrysanthemum, on their hilt or butt of the gun or whatever, because any member of the Japanese empire was essentially a subject of the emperor. So it was a symbol of, I am, in a sense, belong to the emperor. Not literally, but you kind of get the symbolic idea. So when it came time when the Japanese were being driven back or being defeated, they would etch off or destroy their own weapon to remove the symbol so that no property of the emperor would fall into the hands of the enemy. And I think that is something that you can look at when you look at the self-destruct button, in that it is essentially giving the villain control and possession. So he or she determines what survives when this is over. They get to decide, okay, I'm not going to leave any of my technology behind. I'm not going to leave any of my resources behind, that kind of thing. This is also part of another historical tactic, which is called scorched earth. And it was a very popular tactic. It is still used in some instances. So essentially, scorched earth is the idea that as you are driven back, you destroy everything as you go, so that none of your own resources can be used by the enemy. This was done in Sherman's March to the Sea. It was done in Russia during World War II. Name a war, it's probably been done. In some cases, it's one of those tactics that doesn't quite fall into this is something we shouldn't do, but it kind of is outside of agreeable war tactics. So it kind of depends on who you ask. But essentially, destruction of the villain's own lair is an extreme form of this, essentially, this scorched earth policy. They're going to take everything out with them. They're not going to leave anything behind for the hero to use. Okay. So what is another angle of this? Well, this is one I think is most interesting, is that the villain is the self-destruct button is essentially a protection. That's basically what it is. And we actually have, again, another model of this throughout history, and is an acronym called MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. So this cropped up after World War II, but the basis of it has been there since about World War I. So basically, the idea cropped up after World War II because of the introduction of nuclear weapons. And it was this idea that if two countries that possess nuclear weapons attacked each other, they would destroy both of them. Nobody would live through it. Hence the very appropriate acronym. My husband is studying to be a history teacher, and he says he thinks it is the most accurate acronym in history, MAD. So, in this sense, the villain is essentially betting that the hero won't push them to the point that they use this weapon. Because the idea of the hero typically isn't going to be the one that makes the first launch of weapons, but it's fine by the villain. They don't care, generally, in this sense. But I think this actually leads into another kind of deeper plot point, and I think this is really, when I think of this trope, this is the one I think about the most, and that is the villain knows the hero, and he's testing him, and he is relying on the hero to stop him. And that might sound kind of weird, but this is I'm going to pull a really short clip up for you guys, because this is, I think you'll get a better idea what I'm talking about.
Release me! Now!
Or what?
I'll crush her.
Oh, that sounds a little dark for you. Now, go ahead.
It'll be easy, like breaking a toothpick.
Show me. I knew you couldn't do it. Even when you have nothing to lose. You're weak. And I've outgrown you.
Okay. So first off, that was from Pixar's The Incredibles, which I still think is, pun intended, an incredible movie. But that scene in particular, because the smarter villains, not only do they know what they will do, they know what the hero's going to do. They've learned how the hero works. And the hero, in most cases, has a moral code or set of rules that they follow. The villain does not have this restriction. So, in this sense, let's take this scenario again of it's a lair that is in a mountainside and there's a village beneath it, because that's about as cliche as I can think. And let's face it, this probably started with very cliche settings. And so the villain essentially is presenting the hero with the dilemma of, okay, you can focus on beating me and let all these people die when I blow my lair up, or you can let me escape and save all those people. So it puts the villain at an advantage and puts the hero in a moral dilemma, because they are essentially, even though the hero is the one that has to make the choice, the villain is really the one calling the shots, because they are presenting the choices. You know, here are the two options that you have. And that's usually where the villain either escapes because the hero sticks to their guns, or you have a scenario where the hero breaks their code. And either one is interesting. One thing to keep in mind, kind of when I mentioned the MAD acronym, one of the reasons that we created allies in before World War One was not because we wanted to be friends with people, even though that might be the version that you learned about when you first learned about it, but it's not that's not the truth of the matter. We created allies to protect one another from other people, from other countries. So if I am allies with Britain, then people are less likely to attack me because they know if they attack me, Britain's going to get involved, and vice versa. That's kind of the same thing, I think, that's going on with the self-destruct button, only it's not necessarily allies, it's the hero's moral code. Essentially, the villain is calling the hero's bluff, essentially. And I think that's interesting. Now, not all villains will do this, I will say that. Some villains, when they get to this point, they are just so focused on power and winning that if they can take the hero out in the process, that's a win for them. So they're a smidge suicidal. But I think overall, when we're thinking about this scenario, we're thinking about the villain that's trying to get away and is trying to survive. So that's why I didn't draw so much attention to that scenario, because while it does happen, I don't think it happens as much. So bottom line with this trope, I think it boils down to power, it boils down to control, and it boils down to protection. The villain is using all their resources, and some of their resources is their adversary. And they know it, and so they use it. I think that is the basis of this trope. And I do think you can use it very effectively in a story because, one, it's going to show how smart your villain is. Two, it's going to reiterate what your hero's strongest morals are. And three, it puts your hero and your villain at a stalemate. So if you want to build up the tension between them, you can have a scenario like this where the villain gets away and then have your final confrontation later. So it also gives a sense of what's your villain willing to do, because your villain has a moral code too. Their moral code may be that they have next to no morals, but it is still a code. And the more we learn about it, then the more we can become invested in the story. So thank you, Joan, for bringing up this point. I had a lot of fun with this trope. I can't believe I left that one out. So if you guys enjoyed my content, make sure you leave a comment or suggestion below, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss any uploads of mine. I upload every Thursday and every Sunday, but I try to throw some extra videos in there for you guys as well. So until next time, I hope you guys have a great one, and we'll see you then.